It was incredibly loud, and you can see the bullet holes in the neighbor's garage door.
An eyewitness describes the confrontation that killed an Edmonton constable. Good evening, I'm Peter Mansbridge, and this is The National. The family robbed of a father. The desperate suspect accused of hate crimes. And the controversy sparked by an emotional mayor.
Unhelpful, inappropriate, and ill-timed.
On senators' expenses, the Auditor General says enough is enough.
Public funds should not be used for personal or private activities.
How nervous parents can stop undermining their kids.
And you must do that for their own well-being.
And it's a national checkup night with type 2 diabetes in the spotlight. Why is it on the rise in Canada, and how you can fight it? It has been a disturbing and emotional day in Edmonton. Difficult questions hang over the burned-out remains of a house where an eruption of gunfire sent police scrambling and resulted in the death of a constable. Plainclothes police were sent to West Edmonton around 8 p.m. last night to arrest Norman Raddatz. The officers called for backup, and when they brought out a battering ram to enter the house, Raddatz opened fire on the 8 officers. First, he hit Sergeant Jason Harley in the lower back. Then, over 10 minutes, he fired at least 53 times. That's how many bullet holes were found in the house across the street. During the chaos, Constable Daniel Woodall was shot several times and died at the scene. His wounds described as catastrophic. The CBC's Aaron Collins is at the site of the shooting tonight. Aaron.
Peter, across Edmonton tonight, people are leaving their porch lights on, remembering Constable Daniel Woodall.
I feel this most deeply as a father of young children. And I'm incredibly sad for them and for Mrs. Woodall.
Edmonton's mayor expressing the sorrow felt by his city. Constable Daniel Woodall killed in a hail of gunfire, leaving behind a wife and 2 small children.
Edmonton is a safe city because, by and large, good people live here. The very bravest and best among us step forward, police, to protect us from the few and the worst among us.
Constable Woodall stepped all the way across the Atlantic to take on that job.
My name's Daniel, I'm an EPS member. I've been serving with the EPS for 9 years now.
Last night, while Woodall was on duty, his wife was at home retweeting a police warning to stay away from the scene. When Constable Daniel Woodall and 7 other officers showed up at this home last night, they weren't expecting trouble. That's exactly what they found, and before the night was through, the police were pulling more than 50 slugs out of this house across the street. Those bullets came through this garage door, piercing several other walls before passing over Paul Noble.
Where the there was 3 bullets came through there, and if I'd been standing up like him, he would have got it right in the chest.
Neighbors say the man who's believed to have shot those rounds, Norman Walter Raddatz, kept to himself.
Well, he was a distant person. You couldn't. I had no idea. I mean, from talking to him to know what he was like, but he seemed to be a distant person, and I just kept my distance.
The 42-year-old was known to police but didn't have an extensive criminal record, known mostly for harassing a local family online.
The online hatred and bullying of an Edmonton family had become extreme, and the family members were increasingly worried about their personal safety, at which time the Edmonton Police Service became involved.
That online bullying is why Constable Woodall was at the scene. The 35-year-old was attached to the force's hate crimes unit. Still, Edmonton police say they had no indication Raddatz would react so violently.
The first member to the door, Sergeant Jason Harley, was struck in the lower back by a bullet. Because he was wearing protective body armor, the bullet was unable to do any life-threatening damage.
Sergeant Harley was treated in hospital and released. Constable Woodall, also wearing body armor, wasn't as lucky, receiving a fatal head injury. And police say officers on the scene didn't shoot back. Soon after, the home was engulfed in flames. It's unclear who started the fire, but when officers finally entered the home, charred remains were found in its burnt-out basement. Investigators believe they belong to their only suspect, Norman Raditz. Constable Woodall's wife hasn't spoken publicly yet, but she has taken to Twitter again, thanking Edmontonians for their support and calling her husband a hero. Peter?
All right, Aaron, thank you. Aaron Collins in Edmonton. Constable Woodall was part of the Edmonton Police Hate Crime Unit. Here he is earlier this year speaking about what his job entails.
We don't just deal with offenders who are racists. We go through the whole spectrum. We are a proactive unit now that deals with extremism, hate and bias. So we deal with the pro-abortion people, we deal with the anti-abortion people. Everything in between is taken on by our desk. We deal with...
The Hate Crimes Unit deals with about 130 cases each year. All those gunshots and the weapon that fired them were a topic of angry, emotional discussions in Edmonton today, sparking questions such as, did police have enough information about who they were confronting? Here's Adrian Arsenault with what we know about the shooter.
On that Edmonton street, both the house and the man who lived in it were much talked about. Norman Raditz's home was for sale, a foreclosure really. Needs TLC, as is, reads the listing. So money was clearly an issue. Various documents show he was in arrears on property taxes, and the bank was also pushing him last fall before suing him. He ran an air conditioner repair company out of his home, but last month its status was repealed. He hadn't filed his returns. But could that lead to this? Neighbors saw more happening with the 42-year-old divorced Raditz than personal and financial issues. Little things at first, but they noticed.
Didn't care about anything. He just stayed in the house, never did any maintenance on the house, just really falling apart, just really run down looking, had a lot of garbage piling up. I'd never seen him go to any job whatsoever. I know he was a refrigeration mechanic. He had a van full of tools, but I've never seen him ever go to work day or night. His van's there every day.
A broader motivation for the viciousness last night may lie in that supposed extreme online bullying Raditz was engaging in. Who was he raging at or why? Police aren't yet sharing that. But it seems Constable Daniel Woodall may have been worried about safety. The neighbor, Ryan Colton, said today it was a plainclothes Woodall who asked him if Raditz happened to be a hunter, concerned about a weapon, clearly. Police have acknowledged a high-powered, high-caliber rifle was used to fire those 53 murderous shots. Should they have known he had one? Initially, Edmonton's mayor was angry on this point.
Well, I do have a concern with gun violence, and I will say that the loss of the gun registry may be related to this. I think every opportunity our police have to have knowledge of where firearms are in this city would be to their advantage, and the chiefs of police have been consistent about that.
A comment that infuriated some in Ottawa circles.
Well, I've already called that absurd, and I think the focus today has to be on the constable, his family, his colleagues in Edmonton. That's where our hearts and thoughts and prayers are.
Is it inappropriate to ask that? At least one criminal defense lawyer is making the point today that a long gun registry may not have helped.
Police officers treat unknown residents as potential places where there may be firearms. They don't go in, walking in carefree just because the gun registry said there wasn't a gun there. So, these are operational issues about policing and really have absolutely nothing to do with the gun registry.
The mayor did apologize, and Ottawa paused, a moment of silence for Constable Woodall. Silence, but not rest. There's still a lot to determine about what happened and how, and the weapons question isn't answered yet. CBC has learned Raditz had been licensed as a gun owner, but his firearm certificate had expired. Police would have known those details, but not, it appears, the full measure of the man they were trying to arrest, who, it seems, was waiting for them. Adrian Arsenault, CBC News, Toronto.
For the latest on this story, you can always head to CBC News Network or cbcnews.ca. And to follow breaking news as it happens, follow CBC Alerts on Twitter or download the CBC News app for mobile.